Fargo. It is good to be back. This is my 8th trip to Fargo, North Dakota, the first one taking place in a month not named December, and it feels like a foreign country to me. You know what's fascinating is the first time I came to Fargo, my perception of this city, this area, was shaped by popular culture and Hollywood and comedy. And I remember one of the first things I did, I went to your tourism center and I got a picture by the wood chipper because that's what I thought Fargo was about. Then I learned pretty quickly that was a stereotype you guys didn't like. And the more I frequented Fargo, it was incredible how quickly not just stereotypes shattered, but perceptions also crumbled. And the way I started to view not just this area, but the people here changed. You start from seeing maybe a group of people at the outset. The more you come and the more you get to know them and talk to them, you find out they're these complex characters. They're not caricatures, they're well-rounded. And a group of people quickly turns into a collection of individuals. The reason I bring that up, because I'm first generation. My parents came here from India. We know what stereotypes are like. I was born in New Jersey, grew up playing sports, going to school, doing things American kids do, but stereotypes were unavoidable. And I remember the one stereotype that I hated growing up and that my community as an Indian American that we hated growing up was that of Apu from The Simpsons. I loved The Simpsons, but that was such a caricature. That was our version of Marge Gunderson. And you rebel against that and your community doesn't like it and you try your best to change it. And then I discovered as I got older there is a little bit of hypocrisy that exists. And as minority subcultures, as an Indian American part of that community, one of the things that I found out was that, we kind of have our own stereotypes, our community, and maybe we don't like the Apu stereotype, but we put stereotypes on our own people. My own community telling us what we can and can't do, who we can be and can't be. And great example of that is, as an Indian American growing up, one of the things that you're expected to do, the expectation, the cultural expectation is you go into a profession that's going to make you money and you're going to be successful and that your parents can brag about you. And the number one profession on that list is doctor. Now, I know you're thinking, it's a hell of a stereotype to have. It's a pretty good stereotype. People have asked me, are you a doctor? If I'm feeling like it, sometimes I'll lie and I'll say yes, because shoot, it's not the worst thing. But if you're not a doctor and you're not a lawyer or an engineer or an IT guy or in software, then sometimes you're a disappointment. And that's not a label put on us by society at large. That's a label that we put on ourselves. And so if you have somebody from your community, somebody from my community who wants to be a painter, a writer, a musician, a sportscaster, your first line of resistance is met by the people who look like you. And I remember this from growing up. I was very fortunate in that my parents were incredibly supportive of what I wanted to do. My dad has a degree in accounting, and he's been a professional photographer his whole life. So he can't tell me not to pursue my dream. But the reaction that I got from my community growing up, and I knew what I wanted to do when I was 14, 15 years old, was you can't do this. You can't be a sportscaster. Well, why not? It's what I love. I love sports. I grew up watching it. I love studying it. I like the numbers. I like the nuance. Why can't I do this? I'll work really hard. That's not what we do. If you do that, you're not Indian enough. You're too white. And here I am thinking to myself, well, nobody else has told me this. Why is my community not even giving me the chance to get to that threshold where I could fail or succeed? It's funny how it works. And I started questioning, why can't they just be supportive? Am I stepping out of bounds? Is there some arbitrary nth degree of ethnic authenticity I need to meet to be considered a member of a group? And not just a group, my group. And so I got frustrated. And then I decided to do it anyway, and one day I ended up at ESPN, and I got that job, and it was funny, all of a sudden I represented. And I struggled with that for some time because I said, hey, I'm the same guy that you said couldn't do it because of what I looked like and where I was from and where my parents were from and because they have accents. But I got to the finish line, and now I represent. And the message that I want to put forward is, that's not where we need you. We as minorities sometimes like to put these labels on ourselves. Not black enough, not Asian enough, not Hispanic enough, not brown enough, not Indian enough. What does that mean? This is America. We came here because we didn't want to be defined by lines. We didn't want to be constricted by boundaries. And instead, that's what we're doing. And we're not having somebody else do it for us. I'm totally aware, yes, there are some societal factors that maybe can impact what you can do. But maybe let's allow us to get to that threshold, because we're really good at fighting against that when it happens. But coming from our own, we don't need that. Let's encourage our people. Let's encourage them at the starting line. Let's encourage them when they get to mile marker 13 and they're thinking, man, I got some doubt. I need a cup of water. I need a pat on the back. Go finish the marathon. But sometimes we discourage them to run the race entirely. And that's always troubled me. And I want to tell you a story here to kind of wrap things up about this experience and where we can go from it. My first job in television was in a small city in central Washington, Yakima. And wasn't making a lot of money, was living in a small apartment, and across the street we used to have all these drive-through baristas. It's big in the state of Washington. And a couple times a week I could maybe afford a cup of coffee from there. So I'd pull up into one of these drive-through baristas my first couple of weeks, and I remembered the woman at the drive-through liked the way I presented my order. And I'm thinking, all right, yeah, I'm on TV, my bass and treble hitting all the notes. She likes the way I sound. I mean, my ego is kind of propped up a little bit. I was like, okay. And then she asked a follow-up question. She said, what's your nationality, if you don't mind me asking? And to make things perfectly clear, there was no malice. I think it was kind of genuine curiosity, like, maybe I don't see a ton of people look like you and didn't expect you to sound the way you sound. And so, me being me and trying to have some fun with it, I kind of deadpanned and I said, my nationality, American. So then she goes, no, I mean, where are you from? To which I replied, New Jersey. Clearly not the answer she was looking for. Then things got a little bit awkward, and she kind of started to stammer, you know what, it's okay. I'm just going to make your coffee. It's going to be on me, and get out of here because this conversation needs to end. But I tried to explain, and I said, I think what you meant to ask me is, what's my ethnicity? And my ethnicity is Indian. My parents came here from India. But at this point, she just kind of said, all right, there's 5 cars behind you. The coffee's on me. Don't worry about paying. Don't worry about tip. Just go. So I drive off. But I'm thinking this whole time, I'm like, all right, I grew up, and people from my own community told me I wasn't Indian enough. And based on the way I look, there's probably a segment of people who will never look at me and say, hey, there goes an American. And it's something that I've always thought about. You kind of get trapped in this vortex of who are you? What's your cultural identity? And I started to think, I go, this idea of what an American is. What is an American? What is the American way, because we're always trying to define that as a country. We always talk about, this is the American way, the American way. Well, what is that? And I've lived in New Jersey. I live in North Carolina right now. I've lived in upstate New York and Connecticut. I've traveled the entire country covering various sports for ESPN. I lived in central Washington. And everywhere I go, this definition of what an American is different. What you guys may think an American is in North Dakota is different than what people in North Carolina may think. It's different what people in New Jersey may think, what people in Connecticut may think, what people in Texas may think. So, thought about it, and I said, you know what? I don't have an answer, but that's our strength as a country. We are division by 0, and we are infinity. And we continue to try to define who we are. We do it in these little subgroups. We do it on a macro level. And when we do it, we close ourselves off to possibility. If an Indian American can be a musician or an artist or a writer or a painter or a sportscaster, let's take those cultural shackles off, because that could potentially open the door for so many others from the community. Here in Fargo, you guys don't like your stereotypes that you have, and I've seen the way that you've broken them in many ways with what you have in your football team here, North Dakota State, becoming this national brand. But it comes back to this idea that, we're so into defining ourselves. Let's move away from that. We don't need a rigid definition of who we are, because what's beautiful about our country, and I say this through the prism of a first-generation son of immigrants, what's beautiful about our country is that our nationalism isn't as defined as it is in other homogenous cultures in Asia and Europe and Africa. You go all over, you see all sorts of different people. And we are undefined, and we are all possibilities. So why limit who we can be, where we can go, and what we can do? That's what I'm for. Thank you.